Awesome, awesome, awesome. Welcome back to another episode of How to Make It in Toronto. And guess what? We have our favorite person back. Manuel is back here today. We're going to have an awesome conversation, continue off of our last conversation where we talked about Manuela's coming up story, essentially where we learned about her background, how she started the business, what Isomers was about, the things she's overcome. But now we're going to jump into where she's at now. You know, the amazing CEO that she is, you know, how she prepares, what makes her successful, what makes her team successful as well is what we're going to focus on. And we just want to take a moment to say, welcome back, Manuela.
Well, thank you for having me. It's so nice. This is great. I really love being here. Carl, thank you so much for having me. I'm looking forward to this because I think it's really great to be able to reconnect and to chit-chat a little bit and, you know, see where we're going.
Yeah, that's awesome. Cool. I mean, it's always great to have you here. And, you know, we always start off with a pretty, tough question to get going. So I wanted to ask you, because this is actually feedback that I'd received from someone. What's one thing or one of the toughest things about being a CEO that people don't know about?
Okay, so that's a good question because most people are going to talk about CEOs are, decision makers and leaders and they have to make tough decisions and da-da-da. But I think CEOs, and especially how I see my role, I do see my role as a leader, but I also see my role as a problem solver, and I have to actually figure things out before they happen. I have to kind of predict the future. I have to see where we're going and make sure that the team is ready and prepared and able to go in that direction and that I can guide them in the proper way. So I think that's important. And that also means that not only do I have to have the big picture, and have a big picture, you have to have a plan, and you have to have the right team to be able to execute this plan. But throughout the company, I believe that everybody has to feel, especially in our company, it's a small company, it's more family-owned company. There are jobs that I do that people expect me to do, and I do them even though they're not CEO things, but they empower the staff or they make them feel special. So some of the things are, for example, I have one employee, she's been with us for a very long time. She's almost in her 70s, and she will make a point of coming into my office with little lists of all the supplies that I need to personally make sure that I get for the staff, and I do it. So basically I run little errands for her. Yeah. And I think that it creates such a sense of pride and attachment and community with my staff. So I think that that's one of the things as a CEO that's different. Like there's this family part of it. There's business and there's a little bit of family part. And you have to understand each employee, what their needs are. And sometimes it's just that they just need to have a bit of a touchstone, a little bit of a connection with you. And so I always have to make time for different functions. Yeah. It does take away from my day. It does take away from the focus and the plan. But I think it adds this human element to the business. So I just think that that's something that's different that we have to do as CEOs.
That's awesome. Let me ask you, based on that question, just to dive into like the family aspect of the business, right? And it being a family-owned business, what are your thoughts? You know, when people say don't involve family in business or refer to your employees as family because they may be conflict of interest in there. What's your take on that? Because some people say don't call it family. Some people do. I feel like the way you manage and the way you lead, it is really more of a family-based style, or at least community style. You're very close with your employees. I know you lead through service. You're always doing a lot for your team. What are your thoughts on that subject in general?
Well, I think that to be able to have a team that's going to double down and be the best that they possibly can be, and they're going to spend more time with me than they do their own family, this better be family. They need to feel safe and secure and they're respected and loved. So I think it's very important to have that kind of community and love and to have people together working on a plan. Being honest with them, not crossing certain boundaries, obviously, are very important. I think that when you have family that are going to then, you pass the torch on to family, or they're going to inherit it, I think that family then also has to be treated or introduced into a business where they have to have the right skills. You can't just have, the idiot king walk in. You know, everybody's got to be able to know what they're doing, because otherwise I think that the company just doesn't flourish. So you've got to be realistic about who the talent is, what talent people have. Like that part, you can bring people in that are of different talents. But for me, the family member that's coming in, or if they're a family member in our instance, they actually have to raise the average. They have to raise the bar. If they're not ready to do that, they're not ready to come in. Or we're going to have to switch our business up, right? So it's not that you build something and then you're allowing it to be compromised. I do think that you try not to hire or have people that get involved as a separate family in a business.
Yeah.
Well, you know, when people start, you know, dating each other or things like this in your own entity, I think that becomes much more of a conflict.
Yeah.
And it kind of undermines the work environment. But outside of that, if you manage it correctly and if you still have a standard, I think families can work, and I think your system can work, that everybody's there for a reason. You're not doing anybody a favor. So everybody's there because they're really good in their area. They have something to contribute, and you have a plan. They have a job to do, and they have a role that they have to play. And it's very clearly communicated, and the expectations are there. Then you can manage it. But if you're just grouping a bunch of people together and hoping hoping that the Leafs are going to win, no, they actually have to be a team and a family.
Exactly. No, I totally agree with that. So, I mean, for you, I think there's two things. I'm going to jump into the team after, but just because you brought up, you know, passing along the business, what is it like leading? Because your son is involved in the business, obviously, as well as your husband. What do you think are important skills that you would want to pass on to him, so that if he does come in to lead the company or be a part of the business, are essential for him to understand as he would take on this role in managing your business, you know, from where you're going to leave it off?
Well, I think he needs to be exposed to all the different aspects, all the different disciplines. And ours is multifaceted because we're vertically integrated. So we go from innovation, manufacturing, ideation, distribution, presentation. We do it all, right? So that's a big thing to take on, right? So he needs to know enough about what the process is, and he also needs to know that the people that we have in charge of each one of those layers are the best that we have. Yeah. And he's got to be able to work with them at that level. And if any switches in those levels happen, they actually have to go up. You know, we have to go up the ladder. Yeah. We're not going to go down the ladder. Yeah. And he has to climb the ladder too. He's got to actually meet them. So this is part of how we're bringing it in. So we're having him do innovation, and we're having him feel the process. He's going to have his own little wins and failures, and a lot of it is in his hands. So we're giving him ability to make mistakes early, almost like when you raise a child, you know, under a certain age, you want them to struggle, you want them to do, and then you kind of just let the training wheels off. And that's what we're doing in this situation. Yeah. So right now we're working to his strengths, but I'm trying to not point out his weaknesses. I try to. This sounds really evil, but I try to create situations where his weaknesses will come out, and he has to deal with them. Cool. Yeah. So then he can build resilience, so he doesn't avoid them, because the more you avoid it, the more problematic it becomes, and the more we start fooling ourselves, the more we're covering up for him, the bigger the gap is going to be. Yeah. So I want him to actually struggle. Yeah. And I want him to not ask me. So when he asks me, I now pretend I don't know the answer to things. Yeah. I make him go and find it through somebody else, and help him create a relationship with the team members, and to create respect, and to see what their depth is and what they have to offer, and how they're going to benefit. It's going to benefit him, but he's also going to benefit them. So he is a lot younger in some instances, or in some instances he's the same age as some of the people. So this is really important for him to develop those different relationships, because it's a big ship he's going to steer. Yeah. You better, you don't want to, I think that's capsize. So cool. Yeah, it's almost like, throwing you into the deep end, so you learn how to swim for yourself, because you're not always going to have that lifeboat there. And how do you think he's handling it so far? I think what's happened is that he's actually been able to see what he doesn't know, and understand that he doesn't need to rush it. So he's learning how to learning how to prioritize. And I think that is a very important skill, prioritizing and knowing where to focus. Yeah. today and what to focus on later on. And I think that so far is, so far so good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome experience for him, I'm sure, too. But let's jump into the team side, because, obviously you're talking about your team and how important they are, to you, to the organization, and the success that you're having. What are three things you look for, or what are three things you focus on when building a team, or you think are essential to having on a team in terms of quality that a person provides in terms of skill set?
Well, they have to have the skills. They have to have skills that I don't have, right? Because if they have the same, if they're a duplicate of me, or if they're at the level that I am at, then we're not going anywhere. Because already, if I've maxed out and I'm just spreading out, I'm diluting in essence my skill set and my time. So the team has to offer things that are complementary and more advanced than I have, much more innovative than I have. And then we also have to have the same kind of work ethic and same kind of, I need people that are not yes men. I need people that are going to be working really hard, dedicated to the process, and have that, ability to work independently, but work as a team. They've got to be, I guess, honest, have integrity, have the skill set, but also have the drive, right?
Yeah. What kind of personalities work well with you? Like what types of people do you like to work with? Do you like the, as you're saying, you kind of mentioned independent, or do you like, the kind of A type, overly confident, comes in, shoots, does a presentation for you? Like what personality traits or work types work well with you?
It's a good question. I think the personality types that work best with me are people who know what they're talking about. People who don't BS work well with me. I mean, I don't really care if a person is an introvert or an extrovert, and some people, they have just different energy levels and different styles. But for me, people need to be, if they don't know, they need to tell me. They need to be able to communicate. And I think that they just have to not make things up. Like I have no problem with people who are not at a certain level at a certain time, or are trying something but are not sure. I do have a problem with being misled. I do have a problem where they're always a victim. They don't take responsibility. So for me, with me, they just have to be pretty much willing to do the job and be honest about it. And willing to explore and to grow as well. Like willing to say, okay, I made a mistake, or I don't know this part, but not give up. If they're willing to learn it and to do it, there's no problem, right? Because we're all going to learn and grow.
Yeah. I know that marketing is an essential part to your business and with your content creation. Could you give some tips in regards to what you think is important for, building out a solid content strategy like you have? Like, what are things that you think people can take from, because you have a great personal brand.
Right.
You have a great, obviously business brand as well. And I think the way you share your content is phenomenal because you have all your different channels that you work on. So if someone's starting out and is looking to build a great personal brand as well as business brand, on top of your podcast brand as well, what are some tips you can give, either if they're looking for someone to help with their marketing, the type of people to hire, or just for you in terms of how to get started on the content and what to deliver to their audience?
You have to know who you are. You have to know what your brand is. What is your brand? What is it that you're trying to, who are you and what are you trying to achieve? What's the purpose? Like boil it down to something simple like that. Like, why are we doing this? Who are we trying to talk to? What are you trying to solve? What is it that you're offering? I think that's very important because a lot of people want to be a lot of things, but they don't even know who they are. So how can you offer something to somebody when you don't really know what you're selling, right? So you have to know your brand, who your brand are, the core essence of your brand, and then you have to know what you stand for. What are your pillars? And then from that is where you build your marketing and your strategy and your message, right? So how do you want people to feel when they listen to you, or when they use your product, or when they interact with your brand? What service, what are they going to get out of it? This is very important. You have to have, for example, I love to educate because I want to empower people. I want people to be stronger and smarter. What do they want to be stronger and smarter? I don't know. Some people don't want to necessarily be stronger and smarter. I assume they do. And so this is my message. My message has always been about being the best in class. My message is about I want to create the best product or the best service or the best piece of information. It has to be at the best. So because because I'm very busy, and also I'm not very good at defending myself. So what I mean by that is, if it's not the best, if I did a half-assed job with something and someone came at me and said, this isn't quite right, or this, you could have done this better, then I start feeling like, oh my gosh, I start worrying about this. I start overthinking and I start worrying, I get stuck, and then I don't know what to say, and it kind of, but if I know that what I've created is the absolute best, it's the best in class, best quality, it solves many problems, then I rest.
Yeah.
Like, I know I don't have to worry about it, because nothing's going to beat it. They can't, the science, no one's going to beat the science. No one's going to beat the information. No one's going to beat. So this is what I try to do. So my thing is I create the best. And then from that, I give out the information, and hopefully it empowers people. Do you buy my product? Maybe. But you'll still use my information to make decisions in your future, which now I've empowered you. So this has always been my brand, right? Yeah. So I work on that. So I think people need to figure that out. You need to figure out what are you doing really? Like, what are you trying to create at what level? And what do you want people to feel? And what do you want people to walk away with? And from that, then you create the content starts to create, because you literally just talk about your pillars, right? You stay with your integrity, or you tell them why you're the best, or you tell them the story of what brought you to this point. And the content just kind of creates itself. The budget just balances itself.
Exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you, based on, obviously you've been in situations where things haven't gone perfectly, right?
Yeah.
And you've had to, obviously iterate on, your plan, or, and like you mentioned here, maybe sometimes you may overthink or something like that. How do you overcome, or what steps do you take to overcome those issues when you do face them? Like, where do you start? Like, is it like you make a list of, okay, I had created this, and this, it didn't go the way I wanted to, or it didn't come out as the best, up to your standards or expectation? What are next steps for you? How do you go about either fixing that or recreating something from that?
Well, I always take back what I've learned, right? So if it's not the best, what's wrong with it? What is the problem? Is it the information that's the problem? Is it the science that's the problem? Is it what it's solving completely wrong? Like, where am I? Is it a 50%? Is it a pass? Is it above a pass? Then it's worth salvaging. If it's not even a pass, then we're going to start all over again, right? Yeah. We're going to change, not strategy. We're just going to change our hypothesis. How are we looking at this? How are we going to achieve this, right?
That's so cool. Yeah, exactly. I love that.
Because it's almost like, people in skincare, I get a lot of questions, right? People ask me a lot of questions about, I'm using retinol, I'm using a retinoid, and my skin is irritating me, but I'm still using it every single day, and my skin is only getting worse, and I'm using it, and how should I use it? I'm like, stop using it. Why would you keep using it if it's hurting you and damaging your skin? And they're like, well, I never thought of stop. Well, no, stop. Yeah. Let it heal, and then slowly reintroduce it in a way that it can meet a certain threshold. So you're getting the benefits, but you don't have any of the savage side effects, right? So you stop, and it's like, I didn't realize I could stop and do it all, change my strategy. So this is what we do. If it doesn't work, you stop, you reevaluate, but you just don't plow through all the time. Yeah. So you only plow through when you only have one way to go, or when you know that maybe if you don't have any options, right?
Yeah, exactly. Can I ask, as a CEO, do you make one plan, or do you kind of have a plan A, plan B, plan C, and kind of change as you go? Like, is just asking in regards to your strategy, because obviously with your business and you're creating different products all the time, having to market them out, also going through because you do, A to Z in your business. Obviously, like if one thing was to go wrong, it could affect a lot of the other channels as well, right? So Absolutely. I was just wondering, do you create one plan and then you'll iterate off of that, or what's your style of?
I always have a good, better, best scenario for everything. There's always a good, better, best. So there is a plan A, plan B, plan C. So I talk about my plan A. This is where I put my team is on plan A. Everybody's on plan A. When I do the presentation, it's on plan A. But I really only know we're going to get to plan C. But I put A out there.
Yeah.
I put A is where I want everybody to go.
Yeah.
Once they hit C, I'm already fine.
Yeah.
And when it goes, in different aspects, then I tweak it to make sure we get to A, try to get to A. But it's really where we want to see. So you kind of like shoot for the stars, but you really want the moon, right?
Yeah.
That kind of idea. So I plan it that way. So in the worst case scenario, we should actually hit the plan. In the best case scenario, we're well above the plan. So when I used to do, like when I was in TV shopping and I used to help schedule TV the business, they used to have a goal for every day. So say they want to do $500,000 in a day, or they want to do $1 million in a day, or this day, because they have certain budgets and they know like weekdays versus weekend, prime time versus non-prime time. And so people were failing at this all the time. They were getting like 50% results, 60% results. So basically it's saying that you want $100,000 for the day, but you're only making 50,000 or you're only making 60,000. And they're trying to figure out, well, there's 24 hours in the day. You divide it up by, so many dollars per hour, whatever. And this is how you budget your plan. And when I walked in, I thought, I would never do it that way. I basically said, there's only 20 hours in the day and we have to do it in 20 hours, right? Yeah. And now out of those 20, so basically it was like 80-20 rule. I'm going to get everything I need in this one chunk, and everything else is gravy. So you always make space. So the plan, there's that plan, but how do I execute the plan? Is I make the plan even a tougher little plan that's harder to kind of focuses, even more laser focus with a little bit of buffer on the side. So then hitting the plan becomes easy.
Yeah. That's true. I love that. That's a good way of always doing it. Giving yourself that space to be able to iterate, or also have that backup already,
absolutely
ready to roll through.
Because you're dealing with people, and people never behave how you think they're going to behave. True. You can't predict how people in our industry. Well, with e-commerce, it's changed a lot, because e-commerce, like if it's good weather or bad weather, it really doesn't affect people's shopping experience. But with TV, it really did. If it was good weather, people will be out. If there's a storm, they're in. The other day I was on air and Trump verdict came in. It affected the hour I was on. It was the worst hour of the day because nobody's watching, right? So you can't. So if you actually had bet the farm on that hour, you would have lost, right? Because you can't control how people behave, and you can't control all the things that are going to happen. Yeah. So you have to create a buffer. You need to always like play it in a way that's, especially as a business person, you've got to manage your time, your goals, your efforts, you've got to manage, because you also have to be the one that kind of saves if it goes the other way, and you've got to be prepared to save it. You've got to give yourself enough space to do that. Yeah.
I think there's a great saying that goes, in life, it's not reality that lets you down, it's your expectations, right? So that's a good way of kind of seeing it and making sure you're prepared for that. You're mentioning, obviously, with e-commerce, and just how big it's become from kind of going the retail way. So with Isomers, did you always have like a big e-commerce plan, and how did you kind of incorporate that into
COVID? COVID helped us. Before, there used to be within our industry, it was basically understood, or you had agreements where they considered e-commerce competition to TV, and now things are more omni-channel. Things are a little bit more open. And so what we did was I focused more on the e-commerce after or during COVID, where travel became more restricted, interactions became more restricted, and we could do more out of there. And also it's to expand our distribution, right? Yeah. With e-commerce, you become much more international, you become much more self-sufficient. There's better economies of scale. Just understanding also the different platforms. I'm starting to learn about different platforms to interact with in e-commerce, and some I consider, a little dodgy. But you don't know until you go there. Yeah. Right. And so the good thing is I'm playing both worlds right now, so that I can test these waters and I can build the strength there. So if anything changes, there's a few things. The distribution doesn't get affected. Yeah. So, because I know you utilize TV quite a bit. Are you is that still one of the main channels of revenue for you? Or absolutely, it is. Yeah. And how are you, I guess, being with TV, how are you incorporating your social media into, or how is that working along with your TV? Are you finding it
beneficial, I guess is the question?
Absolutely. I found that it's done a couple of things. One is it's allowed us to go after a new audience, right? It's allowed us to go from a demographic that was older, right? A TV watching, cable watching demographic to a TikTok, Instagram demographic, you know? And so that was really great because we've always had the product that went from acne to aging. So we always had the education, the information, the product development for that span, but we really only had the audience that was much more anti-aging. So the social media has allowed us or given us the opportunity to speak more directly to the younger, a much younger, brand new audience that's very, you know, computer savvy, social networking, and on the socials. So we've opened that up, which is really good. But what we've also done, because I found that we were spending a lot of time with a younger audience and educating them, which was really great because it allowed me to revisit some of our concepts or some of the learning. I had to start all over again for that group. You got to start from, you know, kindergarten all over again. Teaching about what we do it as a brand and help reiterate the brand and help reiterate our pillars. And it was very interesting because it brought so much more to the team and it made our team much stronger because by doing that, the team actually started going through all the old 20 years worth, 25 years worth of TV presentations. And they just kept being, I found this very cute, but it was very interesting too for me because they just kept being more and more embedded in the process because they said, she's been saying the same thing for 30 years. She's been saying the same thing for 25 years. So they because this group wants authenticity so badly, they want to find something that's real. They found it in our videotapes. They found it in everything that I was doing. And so it was so easy for them to take that content and tell this young audience that doesn't know, they're the real deal. So we've already built that history. They didn't throw that history away. Then, so that was really great. And that allowed us to have such a huge international very quickly. So I mean, we literally went from, I think we went from like 50,000 followers to 600,000 followers in like 3 months. Like it just boom, it just grew really quickly while we started talking about this. But what I've noticed it's also done is that because I'm almost the same age, I'm a little bit younger than the average TV watcher, but I've bridged over. Now we're getting 60-year-olds and 50-year-olds actually going into the social. So we're kind of
that's
bringing
so cool.
two sides together, and we're watching this happen in real time, and we're watching it through the engagement of our different socials. So you know, we see the engagement is different on Facebook than TikTok than Instagram, but you can't really trade them. Like you can't say one is better than the other. They're very, very different. And if you treat them all like they have a brain and they're worthy of respect, it's amazing how they show up.
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, like with everything you're creating, because I know your socials are killing it. You make a lot of great content on there. But I wanted to ask, in regards to like your TV and your TV appearances, if I'm basing this more on wanting to help content creators in terms of what is important for you to prepare when delivering your story, because you've been doing it for a long time. Like and certainly we can focus on Isomers, of course, in terms of what do you take out of everything that you do and make that the message that you're going to specifically speak about, and how do you create kind of like either like the value proposition for saying this is why you should buy. What steps do you take to prepare that kind of conversation or appearance when you make it?
I think you have to understand, like for us, when people ask me why is it that you do such a good job on TV? Because I get that a lot. People say, we watch you. And, other networks, other brands, competitors, they'll be honest. They'll say, you know what? We put you on all the time. We learn from you. And it's like, and we can't quite get what you're doing, right? Like, how are you doing what you're doing? Well, one is I'm very, very prepared. I know my products inside out. You can't stop me. You can start anywhere you want along the alphabet, and I know what you're good. I know what to do, right? Mm-hmm. So you have to be the real deal. I think that's very important. If you just go up and it's just a speech, if you just learned a script, if you only want to talk about 3 things, if you don't really want to put it in that you can live it, breathe it, and have a normal conversation, you're not going to be able to do the presentation properly, because the presentation won't come across as authentic and have with depth. Mm-hmm. Things have to have some depth. There has to have some personal touch to it. Then you have to pull out, so you know your product, you know your subject, you know what you're offering. Then you've got to boil it down in a way that you give the information that is useful, that resonates with what their needs are, and then you just have that conversation. Like you just speak your story. Yeah. You don't have to get into a lot of detail, but you have to get into the key points. Like, why is this important? Why should they know this, and why do they need this, right? And if you line that up and explain it, and that they ask you, and then be open to changing it up a little bit every time, in the sense of giving them a little bit more insight, giving them a bit more value. I think that helps a lot with the presentation. And practice. You have to practice. You have to focus. You have to practice.
Do you practice like in a window, or in a mirror?
I used to practice. I don't practice anymore because every day I guess I practice all day long. Yeah. We're practicing right now. I'm talking about my business, exactly. When I do the content, when we had to create content, brand content or product content, I sit there and I read all my ingredients again, and I read about, and I remind myself, what did these ingredients do? What was the science? I look at, old notes that I had, what came up during that time, what's relevant today, that to what I'm doing. And I go back and I practice it. I talk about what's important in that point. So I don't take it for granted, I guess, is important.
Yeah, that's awesome. I want to talk about Isomers. You guys have been around for, is 30 years? It's confirmed?
About 35 years.
35 years?
35 years, yeah.
Yeah. And obviously you already mentioned, like, for example, COVID, in terms of now moving into like the e-commerce side of the business. Yeah. But what do you think is driving the success of the business currently, and where do you see it going within the next 5 to 10 years?
What drives the business is that we haven't wavered from who we are. We've always been very, very honest with our mission, from wanting to be the best and wanting to be unshakable in being the best. So we went with evidence-based ingredients. We went to the fundamental parts of science, and we were very authentic in explaining exactly what it does. So we basically studied physiological structure of the skin, what aging looks like, what are the problems that could happen. This didn't happen overnight, but this is how, this is where we were. And we basically truly wanted to fix something without having to over-explain it. I want to be able to fix something without having to have 15 people help me. I want to be able to people that can handle it on their own. So we created a formula that could speak louder than all the words that it can say more in its silence than all the words I could ever say. And I think that has driven the innovation, that has created the longevity, that has created multi-generational customers and their loyalty because of the performance, because it has been unwavering. So something really funny happened. We went to Paris in April. And we went to Paris in April, and it's the In Cosmetics. So it is basically yearly meeting of scientists and pharmas, and they bring out their wares, right? And they basically these are the new ingredients, this is the new innovation. And you know what, to be honest, 80% of it's garbage. Like, it's just like they just try to create a product just so that they can say, I've created a product. But they're basically taking water and adding some, colorant to it. And there you go, there's the new water this year, you know? So you go, but it's only water. We already have water. So it's not innovative, right? So you have to weed through that, and experience helps you weed through that. So we get into this place, and it's huge, right? It takes 3 days to go through it once. It's that big. You don't really revisit anybody.
So it's like a trade show?
It's a trade show, and it's a very large trade show, and it's very science-based. So it's a heavy trade show. Like, everything you're talking about, there's an equation to something. There's always like a lot of study and literature. So it's not just, trend or whatever. So when we get into the trade show, right at the beginning, they have a huge poster up, and it says Ectoin. And I'm looking at this poster, and I'm thinking, what? And I thought, Ectoin, why is that poster up there? Because Ectoin Darish and I launched it about 22 years ago.
Oh.
22 years ago, it's an extremophile. So it is a bacteria. And we started working with bacteria back then because we knew that the skin has a living layer to it. It's called the microbiome. So we knew the importance of this bacterial layer because of the conditions of my skin. So we knew it because of the struggles I went through, right? So we got a kind of like a VIP kind of access to understanding the microbiome or the microbiota of the skin. Because of that, we were looking at bacteria, understanding there's good and bad bacteria. You know Horton Hears a Who?
Yeah.
There's Whoville, right? So you basically have Whoville living on you. You basically have this world of good and bad bacteria living on you, but sometimes the bad bacteria, and I always say the Crips and the Blood, they come out, right? The Crips and they come out and they overrule, and that shows up as like rosacea or acne or problem. So you need the good guys to come in. So there has to be this balance between the two. So we've always worked with bacteria. So when Ectowin came out, this was an extremophile. This is a bacteria, billions of years old. The initial form of life, they believe, right? And it thrives and survives in impossible conditions, which means that anything that irradiates it, extreme heat or extreme salt, it can survive it. So a cell will not rupture. This is very important in our cells because when you have that, you have life, right? You preserve life under impossible conditions. So on your skin, how you use it is it's an osmotic regulator. So basically it's going to keep you hydrated, the right type of hydration, regardless of if you're inside or outside or hot or cold weather. To make it even more easy to understand, if you have an aquarium and you've got, you fill up your aquarium on Monday, by Friday, you notice there's like an inch down of the water. The water's gone down by an inch. If you had put Ectowin in that water, it would stay at the same level. It would not have lost that water. It won't dehydrate. So this is a very important ingredient. So we started working with it 22 or 25 years ago. So we see Ectowin. And I pull Keon aside because Keon's with. I said, Keon, look at that. The feature ingredient is Mom and Dad. We launched that in North America. Basically when you were born. And he's like, maybe that's just like a vintage poster. I said, yeah, maybe it is. It's not. It's the latest ingredient of 2024. It has now come out so that we were like so far ahead. And now our staff, the team is like, how did you guys know to be like a quarter of a century ahead? Because we didn't know we were going to be a quarter of a century ahead. What we knew was this. We knew that the microbiome was important. The bacteria is important. So the science didn't change. Our structure that we as humans didn't turn into pineapples or bark, right? We stayed as humans. So we still have this living layer. So this thing didn't change. So I think Isomers transcends those times because it's built on something that's it's not meant to be trendy. It's built on something that's supposed to be so fundamental to us.
I love that. That's a phenomenal answer in regards to that's a foundational piece of what to build your business on, because your business is there to solve the skincare issue, and it does, and the science behind it backs that up as well.
And that's why I say we were the best. So this is why I don't have to worry about it. So literally, I didn't have to worry about Ectowin. 25 years went by, and my story stays the same. Now, is that being authentic? Is that being ready? Is it being the best? Is it being, educational and empowering? Yeah. Right. So the people who follow that versus brands that come and go every 2 years, come and go with a different celebrity, come and go with a different value proposition of if you buy this, you get this free and you get this bag. How is that helping?
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. No, I love that. That's totally true. And I think in terms of these days, people are making brands or businesses that are not as fundamentally built. You know what I mean? It's more of an idea that can be a fad and come in and come out rather than building, a real strong business. Let me ask you something about based on authenticity, because, to me, we've known each other for a while. But in case you don't know, Manuel is one of the coolest people you can ever meet, and super authentic. I think one of a kind, like in terms of your type of character.
Me and Eminem, I think, are the two authentic people on the planet. Okay.
So I think, and then I know, certainly in regards to what's important for people to be these days is being authentic, because people are more likely to be drawn to an authentic person. If you could give advice to anyone out there in terms of how to be your true self or be as authentic as maybe someone like you, who I feel like lives in your true self. Like you speak the way you do, you handle your business the way you do. What are some tips you can give or advice you can give someone to be their most authentic self and be as confident as
Get to know yourself. Get to know yourself. Get to know your strengths, warts and all. Get to know yourself. Get to like yourself and protect yourself from other people's comments because they may or may not like you. And you may or may not rub people the wrong way. And you need to be comfortable with that. And once you're comfortable with that, then you can be authentic, I think. You can be comfortable in being authentic because unfortunately, by being very honest or authentic or real, you're vulnerable because you're putting yourself out there. I mean, you can have the fake authenticity where you pretend to be something and you're doing a good job at acting it out, but you're not invested in that. So if people attack it, you're okay because you've got no skin in the game.
Yeah.
But if you're truly authentic, then you're going to have a lot of skin in the game, and you're going to feel a lot of things. So you're going to have to be very comfortable with being alone a lot, with your own thoughts or your own opinions, risking other people's perception of you, but always knowing who you are. Like that's one of the things I had to learn. I tried a lot of times to please people. I walked on eggshells trying not to disturb people. And especially in the early days building the business, I was trying to be like the benevolent, person. And really the people just walk all over you. Yeah. And it really doesn't help you. You end up thinking, wait a minute, I'm doing everything and getting nothing back. And yet I'm holding all the responsibility and giving out. Like you got to also nourish yourself to a point, and you got to take care of yourself. So I think people need to be like who they are and be honest with who they are, and also be willing to sit with whatever it is that happens. Like, you've got to be true to yourself. I think that really helps being authentic. Yeah. And knowing. And then also knowing what your limits are. Because maybe sometimes you don't want to be in certain areas. Maybe you don't want to have certain roles. Maybe that's the authenticity, saying, you know what? Being a CEO is not for me. I don't want to have those responsibilities, or I don't want to put in those hours, or I don't want to have to sit with people in certain situations, or manage my day like this. So then that's okay too. That's being authentic. That's saying, I'm only willing to be at this level or this level. Like, this is all about what you want, what you're comfortable with, and what you own.
Yeah. Awesome. I think that's great advice. That's really awesome advice. We're almost wrapping up here, but I wanted to ask you, with everything that you've built so far, is there anything that you would have done differently?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I would have done so many things differently. Not that I'm not, it's really funny because even with my kids, I say to them, if I knew then what I know now, I would have done so many things different. Even raising them, they're like, we didn't turn out okay. No, you turned out perfect. You're perfect. You're better than perfect. Better than whatever. But it's that insight that says, man, if I knew that, like if I knew what real estate would be worth right now, at 12 years old, I would have started buying up streets. Like seriously, exactly. You would have put yourself in debt. Exactly. That's being smart. That's utilizing that information that you had. Like you'd pick all the right lottery numbers, right? If you knew what they would bet, and you would have picked them, right? So of course you would do things differently. So what would I have done differently? I would have branched out. So we were very innovative to go into TV shopping. We were very innovative to not do retail. So that was already, like, everybody's dream is always to be retail and have lots of stores, everything. My dream has never to be retail. To me, that's so inefficient. I just look at that and I just think, oh my gosh, to be retail, that's so messy. You have to have all these people, all this different stuff, all these trucks, all these different delivery systems, all this environmental impact. It's such a big footprint. Yeah. So I liked being TV, and I liked being, directly to basically one pick and pack place and let them do it. I loved the streamline. So what I would have done is I would have gone international faster than I did. And I also would have, soon as smartphones happened and internet happened and YouTube happened, I would have jumped on it. I hesitated. I hesitated because I didn't understand it as much. I didn't see the potential, but I should have seen the potential. So now I see that it's just another version of TV. It's just another portal. So I would have done that differently. And I would have talked about our wins. Like I would have broadcast more about what our pillars were.
Yeah.
You know, because I think that this is what we're doing now. And it's not that we're playing catch up, but it would have just been, it would have just been something to talk about. The pillars are important, and who the pillars are, and the fact that our pillars also, because we always wanted to be small footprint. We were always environmental. We were always sustainable, because as scientists, like you kind of have to be. Like if you truly are a scientist and a formulator and things like that, you do honor the planet and the environment and the air and the water, because those are the elements you need. Those elements are feeding you. They're creating everything that you're doing. So just by nature, we're doing all of these things that are now chic. But we were never chic. We were just doing ourselves. So I would have talked about that more. And I would have been I think I would have been educating on that as well. So those are the things I would have done differently. I still would have done just-in-time manufacturing. I still would have been vertically integrated. I still would be in North America and not overseas. I still believe that our standards are, especially in the formulating and the manufacturing, higher. So I would have stayed with those things, but I would have pivoted faster.
Yeah, that's really cool. Finally, I wanted to end on your podcast. You know, when we last spoke, you were just getting it started. I wanted to find out more about it. Now I think you're interviewing guests now, right? Could you give me the
Okay, so Confessions of a Cosmetic Chemist. So that's my podcast. So we're trying to figure out, that's the thing about the brand. So we're trying to figure out, what do we call it? What am I trying to achieve? Because it's a confession of a cosmetic chemist. So it's my there's a show now that I realize is very similar in premise, Lessons in Chemistry.
Okay.
There's this show out where she's a scientist and she talks about her life and things like this, and she does different things, you know. So she'll make really cool recipes at home because she takes things from the lab and the principles. So, you know, so the Confessions of a Cosmetic Chemist, the podcast is supposed to be the ins and outs of the beauty industry. And it's supposed to be not the beauty business, but the business of, the beauty of business. Right? So it's basically going to talk about business and beauty, but also business as creating it as a business person, how to do financial things, how to innovate. So we're going to talk about all business aspects. So it's talking about different aspects of my life. What I wanted to do too is I wanted to, again, educate and empower. So part of educating and empower was some of the associations that I'm privy to, or people that I network with. There's a group of women that are all kind of young or new entrepreneurs. And I thought to have conversations and dialogues with them, just to bring them into a circle, just to share with other people what people are working on. As a little part of the Confessions of a Cosmetic Chemist, so that these women that are starting different businesses, even though they're not in my area, but it's like, what motivated you? What are your pillars? To help them brand themselves, to help them talk and to talk through that. So that was one of the things that we're doing. The other thing that we're doing is we're talking about things about aging, and we're talking about nutrition and exercise and lifestyle, and we're going to talk about science. So it's really coming together. So I've done this part where it's been women empowering women kind of thing. And not that I'm a big, I know this is going to sound weird or bad, but it's not that I'm all about, women empowering women. I think people should be empowering people. I'm a real big believer in that. So I'm not 100% on board with all of these kind of initiatives, because I think that people need to show up. People need to be willing to do the work. And I think people need to stop being victimized, right? I think people need to take responsibility, because I do believe if you roll up your sleeves, I don't care where you come from, you roll up your sleeves, you put in the work, you will get there. You absolutely will get there. And I do believe that you can do that here more than any place else. North America and Canada especially is a really great place to do it if you really want to do it. So I just, that's Cosmetic Chemist. That's the podcast. And I think that it's going to, I also want to do a big push on, everybody talks about, 40 and fabulous or 50 and fabulous, or people that are Gen Z, whatever. But I think 60-year-old up, they don't really have people in this space. People who are so I'm trying to bring them in and trying to speak to them specifically in a lot of the podcasts.
Yeah, that's so cool. You're always doing something,
I'm
bigger
thinking,
and better.
I'm thinking about it the same way. So there's the part of the podcast for very young people who
Yeah.
need to know about and to learn about, maybe they want to learn about science. Because a lot of people come to me and say, I want to be a cosmetic chemist too. What did you do to become a cosmetic chemist? And,
Yeah.
you know, and I could say, well, okay, here's the education you have to have.
Yeah.
But to do what I do, you also need to be, you know, really good with language and really good with learning and really good with communicating and spending time breaking things down. Like I take large concepts and I make them very, very simple. You know, people talk about collagen and I'll say, you know, collagen to me is like playing Minecraft.
Yeah.
Right? You're putting all the Lego pieces together, but when they but when you eat it, it all shatters in those different places, right? That's how it's going to work.
Yeah.
So helping people, you know, figure their way through.
Yeah, no, I mean, big fan of the podcast itself. I think it's super educational, and I love the aspect that you have brought into it because it has the entertaining side as well. And I think, again, it's like part of your authenticity. That's the right way to say it. Is you're super vulnerable and open about every subject that you talk about. So I really feel like, you know, your listeners get a lot. Yeah.
Well, you know, I really am 61. You know, I really have been through a lot. And I think that I started a business from scratch. I had, you know, issues with my skin. I had issues with my health. I had issues with, you know, in neighborhoods. Like everything, like nothing happened easily. So through everything, you learn. And if you are willing to talk about it, like I guess I'm just that type of person that when I learn something, I want to share it because I really truly like to empower people. I like to see everybody grow. Yeah. You know, exactly. That's just my nature. Some other people maybe are not like that, but I find that there's a lot of, it's surprising. People don't have people in their family or mentors that talk to them about certain things. And I used to think, well, that should be normal. You should have that normally in your life or in your circle. But I'm realizing that people don't. And I can see it in the comments and I can see it in how people ask me things or how they follow my podcasts or my content and what they're asking me of. And that also makes me much more aware that I need to treat these people with a lot of care because now they're trusting me. So I want to make sure that I can give them the best parts of me that will help them the most. Yeah,
that's awesome. Awesome. Always killing it. Let me end it on this one. So I know the last time we asked if what the soundtrack of your life would be. Oh. And it was Killer Queen.
Yes.
But let me ask you now.
I know what it is. It was launched yesterday. Houdini. Oh my God. Okay. Oh my God. I must have listened to this about 80 times already, and I've watched about 19 reactions to it, which is funny because I've never watched a reaction before in my life until last night when it launched. I was actually in the hotel coming back from Minnesota. It's like when it launched, I think I was with one of the first 1,000 people to watch it.
No way.
And then by the time I finished, or by the time I got up to catch the plane, it was already at, 1.5 million? And now it's over 8 million or something. It's like, wow.
It's flying. Wow.
Oh yeah, but I'm just so, I feel like I'm reliving my my youth. But that would be my soundtrack right now.
Yeah, right now. Perfect. As always, Manuela, thank you so much for your time and for coming on. I appreciate you guys for listening. Check out Houdini. Check out Confessions of a
Confessions of a Cosmetic and Houdini. I need to make a vanishing cream.
Okay. There you go.
For him.
Wow. Thank you so much. Take care. Take it easy, Toronto.